Yeah, that's him. Just take him there, he's 180. Nailed him. He's going down right there. Unbelievable. That's about the easiest height you could ever ask for. What do you think?
I like him. He's beautiful.
One shot, drilled him. And gonna be good in the freezer, that one.
So what happens next? Hi, I'm Stan from Stan's Custom Meat Cutting here in Fort St. John, British Columbia, Canada. What you just watched was my wife Amanda harvest her very first elk this fall. Now, many hunters are comfortable getting to this point. They're comfortable pulling the trigger, so to speak, harvesting those animals. But many aren't comfortable with the process that takes place after that. Things like field dressing, bringing that animal home, whether it's bush quartered, whether it's quartered traditionally down the spine, splitting it evenly into your hinds and front quarters, or maybe it's bringing it to a processor whole. As we've seen over the past few years through the COVID season, we've seen an increased amount of hunters as well as local ranchers processing their own animals, either out of necessity and not being able to get it into a processing facility, or simply just because they really enjoy doing it. Wherever you stand on that, I hope that our videos will help to teach, use some tricks and techniques to be able to process your animals confidently, to be able to put a high quality cut into your own freezer, prepared by yourself, to be enjoyed with friends and family over the next period of time. Today's video, I really want to focus mainly on some of the very, very basic techniques when it comes to processing. Really, without understanding this portion, it's going to undermine the aftermath of the cutting. I can teach you how to cut an animal, but you still have to get that animal into your freezer. And so I wanted to show you in this video the basics of roast tying, the techniques behind that, the technique that I use specifically, as well as wrapping. Now, I personally prefer using a brown waxed butcher paper. I have found that it will last just as long, or in some cases even longer, than a vacuum sealed product, whether you're using a chamber vac machine, whether you're using a food saver, is a very popular one with home butchers, just for the ease of use. Some people say that brown butcher paper will not preserve your product as long. I just simply haven't found that to be the case in the 8 or so years that I've been doing custom cutting. So to start off with, I want to look at roast tying. Roast tying, quite simply put, is a technique that we use to make our roast into a uniform shape. What that's going to do is when you go to cook that roast, being a uniform, consistent shape overall, it's going to cook more evenly, as well as it'll retain a little bit more moisture than a roast normally would if it was left untied. If the roast is left untied, you'll find that the corner edges and any thin portion of the roast is going to cook a lot faster than a roast that is quite uniform in shape. So something that I like to use and that I was taught on at school was actually a block of wood. It's quite simple. Most people have it around home. If you don't have a block of wood, anything firm that you don't mind tying works. So in this case, I have a 2x4. I find 2x4, or I also learned on a 4x4, slightly larger. Both would work quite well. You just want something nice and solid so your string isn't going to slip. It doesn't have much give. Butcher twine can be found almost anywhere, to be honest. A lot of outdoor stores are carrying them now. This specific bale of twine I got from Unipack Packaging. I order a lot of my butcher supplies through them. The other company that I have used their butcher twine, and I actually like it better than this specific twine, is from LEM. They make some great, again, phenomenal home butcher processing equipment, both for the actual cutting aspect as well as some extras like sausage making, which we'll get into that down the road. But for today, butcher twine, I personally like to put the bale of twine or roll of twine into a bucket or on a post, just to keep it stationary, keep it from wandering as I unroll the twine. I also like to have it under the surface that I'm working on. But for today's video, we'll just leave it on the table here. I am right-handed, so I'm going to grab that string first in my right hand. I'll grab the tail with my left hand, and all I'm going to do is feed that under my block. Now, with my right hand, I'm going to form a 3-finger pistol using my thumb, pointer finger, and middle finger. The barrel, you're going to take the tail of your string, wrap it over the barrel of the pistol, and then you're going to twist that barrel underneath of the string. Grab the tail with your 2 fingers and pull it through the loop that you've created. At this point, you can let go of the tail of the string, and you're just going to cinch that knot down. It's going to lock down on itself, and that will hold itself. That'll hold that string tight. You will be able to slip that and adjust it if needed. And you want to pull that nice and tight. If you pull it too tight, you're going to snap the string. No big deal. You'll just have to retie it. Now, all I did there, again, make your pistol, run that string over your finger, and twist it. You're just creating a simple half hitch. All that's doing is securing that knot so your main knot isn't going to slip at all. At that point, cut the tail, and you're free. And you start again. Now, typically, I want to be placing my strings roughly 1 inch apart as I'm tying my roast, starting from the biggest portion of the roast, working to the smallest portion. If you work from the small end towards the big end, what can happen is you'll get a scorpion, we call it, in your roast. Your roast is going to curve on you. Not the end of the world, but you'll get a lot more uniform shape if you start from the largest portion and work to the smaller portions, whether that's working from the center out to both ends or one end to the other. So again, run that string across, feed it underneath your roast, or your block in this case, form your pistol, bring the string over the barrel, twist it under. Grab that tail and pull it through that loop. Let go, and you're going to snug that down. Now you can actually hear that pop as that knot cinches down on the string. And again, I just simply form that pistol again, give it a quick twist, and grab the tail from my knot, tighten that down. Now as you speed up and gain confidence, you'll be able to do this quite quickly, and it's a very fast and effective way to be able to make your roasts look nicer as well as cook more evenly. Now this block of wood is quite light, and so it likes to move around. If you find that you can't get your string tight enough by pulling it, you can use your pointer finger and thumb, slide it down the string, and push that knot into the piece of meat that you're tying. That'll also tighten that loop that you've created around it. Okay, quite simple. Now there are other knots, like most things these days, you're gonna have a lot of different opinions on how to do a roast, how to tie a roast. Different butchers gonna use different knots. A lot of it comes back to how they're taught. This is simply the knot that I have found that I'm the most comfortable with. It's fast, it's effective, and it really creates a very nice roast in the end. When you're done tying, whether you're practicing, typically only if you're practicing, what you can simply do, just take your knife and you cut them all free. And they come off quite nicely. Now, if I grab this knot, like, I cannot pull that knot apart. If you've tied it improperly, you can, but that knot with that half hitch on top, it's not gonna pull free. And as you cook your product, obviously these strings are gonna become loose as the meat shrinks. It'll be very easy to cut those and pull those off after it's cooked. So that's roast tying in a nutshell. Again, simple block of wood is a great learning device to be able to practice knot tying. The next thing that I want to look at is wrapping. When it comes to wrapping, you're going to have three main components. You'll have your paper, again, waxed. Make sure that your butcher paper is waxed. If it's not, I would definitely suggest using a plastic wrap of some sort to pre-wrap that meat. It's going to, again, add a step, but it'll prevent your meat from sticking to your butcher paper. But if you are able to find it, I would grab waxed butcher paper. I personally order it in pre-cut in two sizes, 18-inch by 18-inch and 24-inch by 24-inch. I'll be able to wrap most things with the 18 by 18. The 24-inch will be mainly used for either large packages of steaks, large roasts, and oftentimes ribs. I find sometimes the 18 by 18, while I can wrap it, I won't get quite as tight of a package as if I use the 24 by 24, which will increase the freezer life of that meat that I'm wrapping. So that's number one. Number two is a wax paper. Again, oftentimes you can buy it in a pre-cut sheet. This is what I use, and I simply layer it in between each individual steak. What that does, when I pull those steaks out, it's easy to break them apart if they're semi-frozen still even. again, a very cheap, quick thing to use. It just makes it a lot easier and nicer when you pull that product out. And finally, I would suggest getting a tape dispenser. It's going to make your life a lot simpler when you go to wrap. You'll be able to wrap a lot faster. You don't have to worry about having somebody tearing off pieces of tape and sticking it to a surface where you can reach it quickly as you're wrapping. So again, I've cut two different shapes. The vast majority of cuts you can package in a rectangular shape. Most of your steaks, your hamburger, your stew meat, stir fries, even your roasts are gonna be somewhat a rectangular shape, or have that shape from some angle. The second is the traditional shape of a T-bone steak. You'll also get a similar shape with some of your prime rib steaks, which is more of a triangle. Triangle is the hardest shape to wrap. Tip for you guys, you can wrap Christmas presents the same way you wrap meat. Don't tell anybody I said that. We're gonna start with a rectangle. I like to start with the corner of my paper facing me. I'm gonna place, in this case, my block, but your whatever cut of meat you're dealing with, roughly in the center or just below center of your paper. You're going to grab the bottom tail of your paper, bring it over the top, and you just want, all you need is enough paper to touch the table on the other side. Now you're going to pull that back towards yourself. That's going to draw out any slack on the back side. Then using the flat of my hand, I'm going to crease this paper forwards and pull that corner across. Now I'll do the same thing again using the flat of my hand. I'm just going to form that crease and bring that paper up nice and tight. At this point we're taking out any of the slack and air from the end of the product. This second tail I have to fold into the center here, or else it's going to hang out and give me a goofy tail hanging out of my package. Now I'm using my pinkies. Larger hands are going to make this easier. Small hands, it just takes a little bit more effort, but it can be done just as effectively. With my pinkies, I'm just doing a slight crease on the corners, and then I roll that all the way across. Now at this point, I'll often give it a slight tug back towards myself. Again, that's going to pull out any extra slack from the back side. Roll that up, take your tail, give it a quick piece of tape, and there you have it. Again, as you can see, all the edges nice and tight. There's very, very little air left in that package. Even though it's not vacuum sealed, this package in my freezer, if this is a steak, will last up to 2 years and sometimes even past that if I really need to. Typically they don't last that long in my freezer, but I have had steaks that do last that long, no problem. Pull it out, it's perfectly fine. Again, different animals are gonna age better or worse in a freezer. Pork will not last as long. I found it to be very similar with bear, as well as deer to an extent. Moose and elk seem to do quite fine. But again, the less air that you have in here, the less risk of freezer burn. If you do get freezer burn, simply trim off that discolored portion. The rest will be totally fine, and you won't have much of an off flavor at all. So again, I'll show you one more time with this rectangular piece. Lay it center or just below center, giving yourself just enough room to be able to get that tail end of your paper over the top and back down to the surface that you're working on. Take the flat of my hand, crease forwards, and pull it up nice and snug on the end. Same thing on the other side, and this time I'm going to keep that tail in the center here. Using my pinkies, crease the corners, roll it over, give it a nice tug towards myself, pulling out any extra slack in the paper. Roll it up nice and tight again. Keep hold of that tail, give it a nice little piece of tape, and there you have it. That's how it should look. Again, with some practice. It's a super simple thing. It doesn't have to be butcher paper for practicing. Any square paper will work. Rectangular paper you're going to find is very difficult to get a nice tight wrap job, simply because things aren't square. It's going to make it tough when you go to bring your corners together. You're going to have funky angles. It can be done, it just takes a lot more effort, which is why I like to run with pre-cut butcher paper rather than buying it in a roll and tearing off individual pieces. I just get I know that I'm going to have a consistent shape. I don't have to think about what I'm doing when I'm wrapping once I get that technique down. So that's a rectangular shape. Now I do want to show how I have found to most easily wrap a triangular cut, whether it's a T-bone steak, prime rib steak, or a different cut. Like a shank is another very common thing to wrap that will have that somewhat triangular shape to it. Place it with the flat edge towards you. Similar idea, I'm having it in the center of my piece of paper, facing away from me, roughly center line, running diagonally. I'm going to bring the tail over and have just enough to bring it down to the table. Use the crease on the back edge. This is at a 90 degree, roughly 90 degree angle from my bottom edge. Now this is where the difference is going to be from wrapping something that is more rectangular or square shaped. When I bring this crease over with my finger, I want to bring it to this edge, 90 degrees and past. By doing that, so it's going to look something like so. And we'll see here in a second why we do this. Same thing on the other end. Bring it on your toe end of your steak. You're going to bring it basically just to a 90 degree. It's going to give you the most cover area then when you roll your product. So again, same as we did with the rectangular cut. Roll that over, give it a nice snug towards yourself, pulling out any extra slack on the back side. Now you can see when we brought this tail, the first tail over past that 90 degree, what it has done is now left that edge nice and straight and square. Everything is tight. I can now tape that, and I have a perfectly tightly wrapped T-bone steak. Now, if I don't bring that first tail over far enough, if I leave that at 90 degrees or less, what's going to happen is when I roll that product over, as you can see, now I have all this tail sticking out on the top of my wrap job. I want to roll that back, snug the end up, make sure it's nice and tight, bring that past that 90 degrees to this diagonal portion of the cut. My toe again, I can bring that to a 90, it's going to wrap just fine. Roll it over, give it a nice tight snug, and lay that last tail end of the paper over and wrap it. Again, it's going to be very nice and tight. The exact same technique can be used with a 24-inch paper. It's simply a bigger piece of paper. It'll give you a lot more surface area. You won't have to be as precise with your end folds. Gives you a little bit more grace. If you're at all worried, use a bigger paper. There's no shame in it. It's going to help you ensure that you don't have any air gaps, little pockets that you miss. One thing to be careful of, if you're wrapping with bone-in products, be careful that you do not poke that bone through the paper. It's very easy to do. If you do, simply discard that piece of paper and start again. That hole is going to allow air to get into that package of meat and begin that freezer burning faster. So we want to keep as much air out of that package as possible, which is why we try and get all of our rolls and our folds very tight and snug, getting all the air that we can outside of our package. That's the basics of wrapping. Once you have those two wrapping techniques down, you can wrap pretty much any cut, whether it's wild game, boneless, bone in, whether it's bone in domestic, whether it's beef or pork, lamb, chicken. I've never wrapped fish. Typically we'll do that in a vacuum seal bag. But those are the two basic techniques that I believe every home butcher should know prior to going out in the field and harvesting an animal. That way when you get home, we'll get into the cutting aspect of it. You'll know how to cut the animal, but then you'll know how to take those cuts then, wrap them, package them, put them in your freezer so that when friends and family come over for a barbecue or a family dinner, you can pull that cut out of the freezer. You know that that package is tight, there's no air in it. You're going to have a perfectly preserved piece of meat that you can then enjoy with your friends and family. My hope in this video is that you were able to learn something new, something that will help you process your own meat. You can use brown paper even for wrapping your sausages, whether it's fresh sausage, smoked sausage. Again, it's a very universal packaging method. Going forward, we're hoping to get into things like field dressing, bush quartering, quartering of beef. What does that look like? Where do we make the cuts? Why do we make the cuts? Where do we make them? And then getting into the nitty-gritty of cutting. Again, both for wild and domestic. We deal a lot with both. Friends and family that cut their own meat, that do both. And so we want to get into that and teach you guys how to do it well. And so that when you do go out and hopefully are successful in harvesting an animal, whether it is a wild game animal that you're able to harvest out in the field, or maybe it's an animal that you've raised at home and you're ready to put that animal into your freezer to be enjoyed by your family over the coming months. I want to help you know how to do that and be confident in your ability to do so and to do it well. Please check us out on Facebook, Instagram. We try and keep those accounts up to date with the goings on here at the shop in the area. If you do enjoy what you're seeing here and you want to see more, give us a thumbs up, hit that follow or subscribe button, and leave us a comment. Let us know what you want to see, what you enjoy, and let's head on down this journey of learning meat cutting and what it is, how we do it, and why we do it, to be able to put our meat into our freezer to be enjoyed by our friends and our family. So I hope you guys are able to get outdoors, enjoy the sunshine. Spring is here. We're definitely looking forward to some green grass and sunshine. With any luck here, the next couple of weeks we'll be able to get out and look for some spring black bears. Phenomenal table fare if you haven't tried it. Find a friend that has some. Hopefully harvest one yourself. It is phenomenal meat. Definitely an underrated big game species. So with any luck, we'll be able to have a couple videos coming of that, both field dressing and then cutting as well. Thanks for joining us on the journey. We'll see you in the next